Welcome everybody to another session of the My County Link Roundtable Discussion. Today we're going to be talking with three of my very good friends, Mayor Jeff Whittaker, Ted Finnarn, local world-renowned attorney, and of course this guy, Matt Aultman, the commissioner for now. Anyway, Anyway, welcome everybody, and today's discussion, we've got three very knowledgeable people here. We're going to discuss the property tax issue and some of the things that's going on with it. And gentlemen, thank you for coming and spending your morning with us.
Thank you.
Of course, we just realized that the Senate and the House have passed 5 new bills for containing the property tax. House Bill 186 is the first one that it overhauled how everything's supposed to be calculated. It changed the rules for the 20 mil floor and the minimum amount a school district must raise for its residents. Ted?
Well, let me start on this. So on the property tax side, just to let all the residents know, the tax bills are coming out from the county and they will not be different. They'll be the same as what you've seen last year. And since these bills didn't pass and have the 90-day delay, we won't see the adjustment until your midterm. So you'll have a regular bill in January, February sometime, and then in the June bill, we'll have the adjustment to offset what these bills had passed. So I wanted to get that right off the bat, is your first bill will be the same, the second bill will have the adjustment on it for all these tax legislations that had passed the House. So then that can lead us into the rest of the discussion, just so folks know that, yeah, they passed, we didn't see no savings. Well, you're not going to see savings till the summer bill.
Now, I talked to Scott Zumbrick, the treasurer, here last week, and I asked him, I said, okay, on the second half of the year, how are they planning on doing this? And he said they're not really sure yet. Matt, have you heard anything new?
They're trying to get all the programmers for the computer equipment and stuff figuring out how to handle this. So that's kind of the hiccup why we couldn't do it now, is like they enacted the legislation, then all the people that administer the legislation has to figure out how the heck we're going to do it, and then they only got 4 or 5 months to figure it out.
Yeah.
Or less. So it's really on a time crunch, so we're waiting on the programmers to get the stuff out, and also the assessors, how we're going to handle it in the state procedures and whatnot. But, hopefully they'll have it figured out here by March, and we can get everybody a better answer on how we're going to do this.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Ted, you got anything else?
Yeah, excuse me, I've got that cold virus going around. It's not COVID, it's not flu, but I was going to wear a mask, but I left it in the car. I'd first like to give credit where credit is due. Mayor Whittaker here had a wonderful post he posted on Facebook about the property tax situation, and especially the danger if this petition passes to put it on the ballot to repeal all property taxes. Matt Aultman here, County Commissioner, he's on the Farm Bureau State Board, and the Farm Bureau worked diligently in the legislation 2025 to get these 5 bills passed. And Mike Stegall is a former county commissioner, and he's very knowledgeable. I'd also like to give credit to State Representative Rodney Creech, who is right south of us. Rodney's former chairman of the House Ag Committee. I worked with Rodney on this legislation, and he's going to be going to bat for us again, especially on some changes on the CAUV. I want to give credit to the state legislature. I submitted testimony before the Joint Committee on Property Tax Review and Reform in 2024. I've got a copy of that, but I don't have it with me here today, but I can, anybody that wants it, just call me or just go online to my email. It's toflaw@earthlink.net. I think the legislature, to the credit of the General Assembly, both House and Republicans, has heard the cry of the taxpayers, especially on unvoted tax increases. And that's why these bills were passed. And we'll talk a little bit more about those 5 bills. But also we have to realize the legislature thought that this would probably placate the Cleveland group that's pushing to put the repeal of all property taxes on the ballot in November. Unfortunately, they're still going forward with it, and some of the statements they've made indicate to me and other people that they're very unknowledgeable about how property tax system works and how it benefits townships, counties, rescue squads, vocational school districts, city, villages. That repeal would be anathema to local government And the legislature would have no alternative but to enact a massive sales tax increase. It's estimated that Darke County sales tax would go to 15% to come up with the funds, and I don't think we want that, so.
I think 15's on a low end,
Yeah.
where it could be.
That's what I understand as well.
The thing I worry about is the tax repeal for the folks that's got sales tax exemption, such as healthcare.
On agriculture.
Agriculture is a huge one. Wholesaling businesses, things like that would see that all go away just to expand the base. That would probably get closer to the 15% if we. made
Plus,
that
on the
way.
CAUV, I've been involved with the current agricultural use value. If property tax repealed, the CAUV goes away because it's a real estate, it's mortgage
Right.
real estate. Now, if they ever go back to real estate taxes, don't think they would pass the CAUV again, because they wouldn't. We got passed in constitutional amendment in 73, and I worked on the legislation and the regulations. It passed back then, but CAUV would never pass in the legislature again.
Yeah. You know, Ted was referring to a post I made on Facebook trying to explain these changes, and I'm going to just touch on some of this stuff. When the governor signed these bills on December the 19th, among these changes were the owner occupancy credit will raise from 2.5% to more than 15% over a 4-year period. These laws also tie tax increases resulting from property reappraisals to the rate of inflation. And also the General Assembly granted county budget commissions the authority to reduce the tax rate if they determine that local governments are collecting unnecessary or excessive funds. I think we need to have a period of time to give these cuts, these changes, a time to work without just going willy-nilly and just passing an overall slash the property tax from. The repercussions would have serious consequences to every school district, every county, city, township, and local taxing districts in the state. It'll bust them. Virtually do away with the ability of rural areas to provide fire and emergency services. And like Matt and Ted have been saying, these local income taxes would have to rise to extreme levels in order to replace these monies. Being from the state of Missouri, I want to mention something. I have a lot of family and friends still in the state of Missouri, and I pay attention to what's going on there. They have a new Republican governor, Mike Kehoe, who gave his
Good
State of the State address, and one thing that he wants to do is do away with the income tax in Missouri. I know that's a goal we have here by Vivek Ramaswamy, but that wouldn't be a bad thing. However, we're looking at property taxes going away with an ill-advised amendment going on the ballot. The things he's talking about is much of the commerce happens through monthly subscriptions and digital services like online advertising and e-books and AI platforms. And these are all owned by billionaires. And for a Republican governor, he made the statement, these billionaire owners don't pay it. They don't pay any tax on this stuff. And this is stuff that they can tap into. And quite frankly, he feels that it can not only do away with their state income tax, but they could also cut into the amount of property taxes, which is obviously a very popular subject. But you just can't do it irresponsibly and just leave everything to go. If this amendment passes in November, it takes effect January 1st.
Yep. One of the things about Prop 186 that nobody's talking about, and I think it's a great idea, is that they're going to take the tax credit away from landlords, people that do a lot of rent, and they're going to give that tax credit to the people living in the homes. I think that's a tremendous change right there. So the people that actually are doing the renting, they're going to get the benefit of this tax credit. I think that's a good idea. I think that's a real good idea.
I think the biggest thing that we're overlooking on the whole subject is the fact that property taxes is the last locally controlled, locally voted on taxes that we have a say in as a community. You know, we talk about state sales tax and we talk about income tax and things like that. Those are all administered by people in Columbus. They're administered by folks that's not voted in. It's folks that's in departments. And property taxes, at the end of the day, anything above the base is voted on by you, the voters.
Exactly.
It's voted on when it comes to the ballot for renewals or when there's new levies coming on. This treasurer, everybody knows Scott Zumbrink. He's the most beloved elected official, I think, in Darke County because everybody loves Scott,
Yeah,
even
now
though
that
he
I'm
takes your
gone.
money. Yeah, I hear you.
They like
But-
writing those checks.
But the thing is Scott collects the money, Scott puts it in the bank, and then it gets distributed out to all the taxing districts.
Exactly.
All the other tax money goes to Columbus, and then they say, well, we're gonna send it back, but you never see the justification on the behind the scenes, how much sales tax are collected, where it come from, was it actually in your district? There's a lot of stuff that we're getting that we're not seeing the back, and are we getting the allocated amounts? At least with property taxes, they're adjusted from the auditor that does the adjustment on the values of the properties. They're collected in county and distributed in the county to the school districts, the ambulances, the fires, the cities, the villages, the townships, the libraries, the park districts, the Tri-County Mental Board, the Board of DD, and all those industries. The money comes into the county, it's distributed into the county. It's one of the last bastions of tax dollars that we control as a county, as local control. And everybody always, comes in and says, well, when you have a problem, you can come in and talk to any of us because we're local. So this is one thing that we truly can control as a community and adjust those values. And I think this here will get some of the legislation actually just as the base under the 20 mil floor to adjust some of the things that's kind of gotten out of hand, or maybe the formula doesn't work right.
I'm glad you brought up the 20 mil floor. Everybody hears about millage, inside millage, outside millage. Why don't we take the time to explain that, Ted, or explain what it is?
Yeah, when the Ohio Constitution was redone, I think it was in the 1840s, or they had another one in 1889, your 10 inside mills were provided for without a vote of the people. Every county, township had there was 10 mills, and that was allocated to the county, some to township, and to schools. And back in the 1890s, the 10 mills was enough to provide. And 10 mills would be .001 times your assessed value, which is 35% of your fair market value. Except the CAUV provides farmers valuation at its current use, not at market value. Well, the 10 mills worked for a while, and in the Constitution they said, well, you can go outside the 10 mills, but you have to let the citizens vote on it. So then, like Darke County has 3 inside mills, which is provided very enough, and you have very thrifty county commissioners. Mr. Stegall was former county commissioner, and very frugal city government with Mr. Whittaker and the council. But what happened, schools especially needed more funds, so they instituted more voted millage. You had rescue squads that came along. They needed funds, voted millage. Libraries were allowed to put voted millage. Greenville Public Library, which I'm in, has 1 mill. Vocational school districts had to have tax operate, voted millage. Schools primarily had additional millage, and sometimes had trouble passing it. So that's the outside millage above 10 mills. When in 1976, CAUV was implemented by a constitutional amendment in 1973, 74, 75, we did the regulations. In 1976, there was a big increase in property taxes, and the governor was Governor Rhodes. And Governor Rhodes, to his credit, instituted a freeze on tax increases. Never heard of before, never been done since. So the legislature responded with House Bill 920, which is a tax reduction factor. What that provided for, when your taxes went up because of valuation, you didn't get to vote on it, they were ratcheted back down to produce the same amount, with the exception of the 10 inside mills, and the school district have a little bit of that. And then a couple years later, it was bad for the schools, so they implemented what's called the 20 mil floor, which is made up of various school levies. And the 20 mil floor allowed the school districts to ride with inflation, so they got tax increase. Recently, with the increased valuations we've had in the different counties, the schools got tremendous increase in funds. However, the state school foundation formula would ratchet them down on the state aid because they got more locally. So it wasn't fair to look at the school districts, just, getting all kind of extra funds. And all this got very, very complicated. So the bills that were introduced, you have the
335 is one.
House Bill 186. They said for the school districts at the 20 mil floor, they would limit their increase rather than some of them get 35% more. They'd only get the rate of inflation, like about 4%. House Bill 129 reconstituted the types of levies that are included in the 20 mil school for schools. They added emergency substitute, incremental levies, put more levies into the 20 mil floor. And
335 is the one that has
Yeah.
limited the, what it'll do is your inside millage can only grow with the rate of inflation instead of with your property value. So that's gonna be a huge savings for people. They're
Yeah.
estimating
So like
just this year, 125 to
yeah,
150
like
million
the
in
bill on the
savings.
20 mil floor, they also, and I was really surprised because I worked over there in legislature. I was really surprised they went in after inside millage. Said inside millage, like 20 mil floor for schools, also can only ride what's inflation. So now and also they give more power to the local budget commission made up of treasurer, auditor, and prosecutor, give them more authority over budgets of all political subdivisions. Miami County, for example, they revalued in 2025. The budget commission there went to local governments and got some schools and townships and county to back down on millage, even given the state aid we're getting for reduce. This is additional aid. Now, Darke County revalues in 2026, and hopefully the Budget Commission, working with Mr. Aultman, will maybe decide to lower millage, and it can be inside millage.
That's right.
So I've said enough on that, but if you want more information, you can contact me with
And
my
that's
email.
really one of the better parts about all the bills is that it's giving a lot more local control. And that's what, every district is different, so giving back more local control will certainly help, for sure.
And also, another provision in the bills gives the local auditor more control on its valuation abstract they have to send in. In 2026, all properties in Darke County will be reevaluated. The CAUV will be changed on that table, and we haven't developed it yet. But before, they had to send the abstract to the state. And Ohio Department of Taxation, through the Division of Tax Equalization, they would kind of lord it over each county, and they weren't consistent. And they would say, no, you've got to increase residential more. You've got to do commercial, industrial. The state couldn't touch CAUV because by law, that's determined by a table by our advisory committee. So when we revalued in 2023, our auditor's office had to fight with the state to get our abstract approved because they wanted more. Now in 2026, we call it shots locally. So Mike's right. Local control.
One of the other things that I think changed is really good is we get a lot of emergency levies from schools. And they're supposed to be for districts that are in trouble and they need the money for a little while to get through. Well, most of those emergency levies stay on and they continue to go. Well, the state is, with I think it's 309, they have eliminated that. They're saying, look, you can only pass a emergency levy for districts that are in financial trouble. You can't just come out and say, we need an emergency levy for this and keep it on. They can't do that no longer.
Well,
That is going to be a big hurt too to schools.
I think in Darke County, we just have one emergency levy left.
I think so. I think you're
The,
right.
the only backside to this legislation that I'm worried about is a lot of renewal levies keep the same millage base. Let's say it passed in 2002 for half a mil. We may be collecting 0.3 mils now because of inflation, valuations, things like that. And now we have to pass new levies, which raises the base. So I think there's some unintended consequences that the state level would pass because I tell you have to be in the roots or in the kind of the depths of all this real estate law to understand where we're at on the taxation side and how it works. Because unless you're in there doing the auditor's job are doing what we do in the county and villages and stuff, that actually looks at this stuff, you don't know the repercussions. I think there's a lot of good things coming out of this legislation, but that's one that I truly and personally think is going to possibly increase taxes, because when you make a new levy, every time you have to pass a new levy, you're raising that taxable base from what it was 20 years ago, which it could, unintended consequences is cost us more on a levy. But the emergency levies, we're down to one in this county, so we're in a good place. A lot of them are renewals and things.
Just so you know, all the school districts in Darke County were at the 20 mil floor.
Yeah, most of the schools that aren't on the 20 mil floor in urban and suburban areas, they're the ones that are staying below that floor. But most of your rural areas are at their max, their 20 mil limit.
Yeah, the thing about all this taxation, and I go back to my local comment, is if you don't like the way we're handling money and the way that things are doing, you got school boards, you got township trustees, you got folks sitting on ambulance boards, you got folks that's administering these things, like the library board has a board. We're all held locally accountable. When you see us out and about, you see us in the community, and you can hold us accountable. Tell us. Get off of Facebook, meet with us, and come and talk about this, that we can have a conversation on what your issues are. It may be something that you're missing out on a discount, or there might be something where we reevaluate the value of your house, or things through the whole process. And there's mechanisms to do that, to bring down or at least evaluate what your house is worth when it's evaluated for taxes. And I still think this is probably one of the things that, let's get these enacted, see how we do as a community, because I think the fear is even though schools get the largest piece, a lot of schools don't have pay to play. A lot of schools are getting uniforms for their sporting teams. They're getting new equipment. Like every school has Chromebooks for a lot of the kids to utilize for improving their education. And as a community and as a county, I think we want an educated workforce that's going to need a good education and background. So things like career tech centers is a value. The schools' vocational programs are value. Getting that higher learning is a value within our community. And right now, even though you don't have kids in school, you're providing for a healthy economic base in our county to provide a rounded operation, because we don't want to end up like some barren place that's begging for folks to move into because you don't have that brain drain within the community. You have a viable area that's shopping for goods because you got money, and you got an educated workforce that you're going to want businesses will want to move to locate their business here because of the workforce that we're creating through education in the schools and other things within our community. I mean, it's a viable community, right?
Exactly, I agree. And, just passing this amendment is just totally absurd. You'd be pulling the rug out from everybody within the state of Ohio. You really would. I mean, we have pared our budget down citywide as bare bones as you can be, and if you can come and check it out if you don't want to believe it. But this will provide, the property tax accounts for 10.5% of our operating budget. So if you want to do away with snow plowing, for example, pass this amendment. Vote for this amendment, because it's absolutely insane. And the services will dwindle like you wouldn't believe. And then I speak that firsthand knowledge. One thing I don't know what you guys might think of this thought. I've had this many years, having worked in the county treasurer's collector's office in St. Clair County, Illinois. But when I was a young man at 23, in my early 20s and 30s, it just blew my mind. How can these assessments keep rising on people who own their homes, they've paid it off, they're elderly, they can't continue paying increased property taxes? I suggested this to people back there. I suggested it to people here. Everybody thinks it's a great idea. I don't know what it would do actually to collections, but I think that when you turn 65, on the home that you live in, not other properties that you might own, but on the home that you live in, when you turn 65, freeze the assessment on your property. As long as you live in that home, you still be subject to the millage and everything, the levies and so forth. But the assessment stays put. Then, when you pass away, when the family sells your home, that valuation of that home goes back to what it should be. But while that elderly people, you won't be facing massive increases in your property tax. I don't know what that does to everybody, but I think it's coming from me. I think it's a brilliant idea. But
And I would limit that to homestead where they're living, because then it becomes.
that's what you gotta do. You
Yeah.
can't own it. You're 65 and you own 10 million properties around the country, and you're taking advantage of that. Shame on
It
you.
become a tax, yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't be part of your business, but if you're living in that homestead, that's where it should freeze. And I think that would be a
That's a
great
good
thing to
idea.
do. And I suggested it actually to a few of our state representatives, not by my name, because I don't want to put them on the spot, but they know who they are. But I suggested that, and I think it's a good idea, and it should be really looked at.
But as with most things, when we have new legislation, there's people still working on more. There's always some, a couple of them I just want to mention. Representative Gary Glick has a 3-bill package called the Taxpayer Freedom Trilogy. His proposal would phase out permanent property taxes, let voters decide their inside millage, and raise the thresholds for passing new levies. So that's one idea. Andrew Brenner has one to replace all local school property taxes with a single statewide 20 mil property tax. So in other words, that would catch the urban and suburban areas, and a 1.75% sales tax increase. And Dave Thomas, who really was the gentleman behind all of this, started it, he says he's not done yet either. So they're still going to look at some stuff. What I hope is they give what they've got already a chance before they start messing with it. Let's see what it does, but there's already talk about doing some more. Yeah, Ted.
Yeah, I give credit to Dave Thomas. He was county auditor of Ashtabula County, and I've met him. Also, I want to give credit to our good local auditor, Carol Ginn, and also LaVon Wright of Preble County. She did a lot of work on getting information out of the taxpayers. And I want to give credit again to Rodney Creech, who's in the district right below us. And I want to mention I'm the attorney for the Ohio Farmers Union, and we have our state convention this Saturday, and we have a special order of business I drafted on property tax reform. It says basically give these 5 bills a chance to work. You'll get a credit on the second half taxes this year, but in 2027, you'll see a tremendous decrease. Also, we have a special order of business that says no on property tax repeal. And we're getting ready to have a broad coalition on that, working with the Farm Bureau, NFO, and the Greens, and especially zeroing in on farmers, because I talked to some of the farmers up north that were involved with me on the CAUV campaign from 2012 to 2017, where we got a major change in the CAUV law with the help of the Farm Bureau and the Farmers Union. I talked to some of those boys up north, and I said, I just said, now, how do you feel about that property tax repeal thing? They go, oh, that'd be great. We wouldn't have any property taxes at all. I said, do you realize sales tax would have to increase? And don't think for a minute that ag would still be exempt. They wouldn't. And you have tremendous increase. You put up grain bin system, it's exempt now. It wouldn't be. The CAUV would go away because it's real estate tax. But don't think for a minute when they went back to some property taxes, we'd never be able to pass the CAUV again. So I think we all agree here, you want to vote no on that property tax repeal.
Exactly.
If it gets on
And
ballot.
from what I'm hearing, is that the people that are for the reduction or the elimination of the property tax, they're having a little bit of trouble getting everybody now to sign on to it. Now that people are learning,
Good.
I heard they need 400,000
Got
signatures.
413,000 or something like that?
Yeah, and they need 400. They've only got a little over 100 right now. So apparently it's not going as good. And I think people are waking up to the fact that we need property tax.
Well, people
Gentlemen-
need to think about the repercussions
Yep,
of it, that's for sure.
exactly. Gentlemen, I want to thank you all very much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to admit, these 3 people have been wonderful, and they know what they're doing. One of the things I can tell you is if you want to know a lot about how this is going on, there's a young lady, Anna Staver, and she writes for, it's called Cleveland.com. You can get on the internet and pick it up. She's done an excellent job of explaining all this. And if you ever want any more information, you can always call any of us. We're more than willing to help you out. I want to thank you, Jeff. Thanks for coming, buddy. I know you got to get
Thank
back
you
to
very
work.
much.
Matt, I know you got to get there because
Yep.
I'm going to be there with you in about a half an hour. Ted, thank you very much for all you've done for Darke
Thank
County
you.
and for everybody. And I want to thank you guys. And
Appreciate
guys
the
have a great
opportunity
day.
to
No
hash this
problem.
out.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time on My County Link
Thank you.
Roundtable. Bye.